Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Convocation Ceremony. Thank you for helping us celebrate the achievement, leadership, and commitment of our outstanding MFA students. No one graduating today would be here if not for the families and friends who've brought them this far. It's been a momentous, challenging year, and when they say that it takes a village, well, yeah, it took all of us and all of you working together to make it to today. My thanks to you all for your grace, your good humor, your willingness to follow a whole new set of rules. Oh yes, sit down, I'm sorry. Pandemic or not, I should have written that right on the top of the sheet. Pandemic or not, we persevered. Heck, we thrived. The year was filled with remarkable achievements from our talented students. And to the faculty with us today, thank you for the role you play in creating these young professionals. I am so proud to be the dean of a college with faculty members who make a difference in not only the lives of our students, but who also make an impact on the world as a whole through their writing and research. Now I'm extremely honored to introduce Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies, Dr. Jeff Springston.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you all for coming. We're just so pleased that you could join us for this celebration of these fantastic graduates. We're proud of them for a variety of reasons, but they have really embraced the concept of story making. They've met every challenge, and they have realized through not just talent, but hard work and perseverance that the power of story can truly be met. They have written pilots, feature-length films, books, and long-form narrative journalism. And they have truly been an inspiration to the faculty mentors that have worked with them, and we hope sincerely that our mentors have also inspired them. With that, what I would like to do is for anybody that has worked on the staff, in the administration, as a faculty member, or an alumni of the program, would you please stand up and be recognized? We also realized that these graduates were not coming in as perfectly spring chickens like undergraduate students do, but in fact that they have a full lifetime of preparation. And a big part of that preparation is the family and the friends that have helped to mold the people who they are today. And so with that, we would like to have all family members please stand and be recognized for your contribution to this day. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce two people that without their hard work, none of this would have been possible. First, I would like to introduce Professor Valerie Boyd, who is the director of the Narrative Nonfiction track. She is the Charlene Hunter Galt Writer in Residence and Associate Professor in the Department of Journalism. And I would also like to introduce Dr. Nate Cohn, who is the director of the Screenwriting track and also the director of the Roger Ebert Film Festival. Valerie?
See, I had to check with my dean to see what I'm supposed to be doing. I want to say a word about Jeff Springston. When Nate and I came to him with this idea for starting an innovative MFA program, we went to Jeff first, and he was the first to get it. And UGA is a big institution, and there's a lot of red tape. There's a morass of red tape. And Jeff has been the single administrator here who has been the one to help us push this program up the hill. And he's very modest, so I just wanted to thank you, Jeff, for really believing in us from day one and really seeing this program through. Thank you. So it's a tradition in our, at our graduation to have student speakers come up and talk about what the program has meant for them. And to also roast the faculty a little bit, to kind of give us a little buzzing and talk about what this experience has been like for them and how it will impact them moving forward. And so on the nonfiction side, I'm really pleased to introduce our 2 student speakers today. Outstanding, incredible class leaders who have made a difference since the beginning and whose own work you'll hear a little bit more about later, but whose own work has grown by leaps and bounds, even though they already both started at a high level. People who have become social leaders in their class, as well as intellectual leaders in a very stellar class. As I said, you'll hear about each student later, but I'm very pleased to introduce today's student speakers, James Murdoch and Camille Whitaker.
I don't know about the roasting, but let's see. Thank you to the MFA faculty and to all of you who came here to meet us today on this special occasion.
And thank you to all the first and second years who stuck around to see us through, as well as the alum who came back to watch us walk the stage.
If you've ever joined a cult, a good one, I mean, you'll know the process I'm about to describe. At the breakfast of Alice Walker's 75th birthday celebration in Eatonton, someone at the Georgia Writers Museum forgot to buy orange juice. I came to the back door with heavy bags in my hands, gallons of OJ, to look up and see Valerie Boyd. I struggled to get the sentence out. She smiled and said, "I know who you are." Okay. I did not know then that Valerie had organized the entire event, and in the room that day were members of 4 different MFA cohorts. Some of them didn't know that Valerie was about to walk into their lives and change their lives. In our first residency as a class, it became a joke when asked how people learned about the program. A lot of people said they had lunch with Valerie, or had lunch with someone who knew Valerie, or had met Valerie here or there, all across the world it seemed. Some of us wondered out loud, is she omniscient? We learned that she's not omniscient, but like a garden spider, and I'm sorry for that image, but Josina and I agreed we liked spiders, so. She weaves a wide, magical web with which to catch her people, and to be caught here is an honor. Everyone acknowledges this. At the first residency, I felt, and I think others felt, that we were joining a cult. We'd never seen a group of people so collectively excited, and writers are supposed to be cynical, right? Competitive, at least. We soon met Valerie's coterie of excellent souls, mentors she plucked like flowers to adorn the table of this program, and it became apparent this process is not only academic.
We quickly discovered that this was hard work. 2 years ago, we did not think we'd be here. We sat listening to the final readings of the then graduating students, captivated, doubtful, scared. The distance from where we sat and where they had arrived seemed like a gap that would not be closed. The task ahead of us seemed simple: write the truth with courage. So we submitted ourselves to Valerie, her vision, and what she thought that this could be. And the most common refrain we heard from the graduating students and mentors alike was, trust the process.
Thank you, wrote Alice Walker, is the best prayer anyone could say. So before we go further, it's worth saying plainly to you, Valerie, thank you, we love you. We are grateful for this beloved process you've crafted, which has gone so far beyond practical advice for each of us. Like Will Alfred said earlier, we stand here as better people today for the path that you and the mentors have built for us. We're not simply better at our craft. In a time of re-emerging divisions in this country and world, you provided us a place to hear and better understand one another, and we appreciate it.
But this process is less spontaneous than we might make it sound. It comes from Valerie's soul, but it is also made possible by the diligent effort of our wonderful mentors who share Valerie's vision. For them, we are grateful too, and we thank them for their kind, patient, often resilient roles in shaping a new generation of storytellers. Not only are they veterans of this craft, they are wise and thoughtful individuals. They have literally helped to build narrative nonfiction into what it is. To each of you beginning this process, or going into your second year, listen to your mentors. Watch them closely. They know where you are because they've been there. They are here to guide you to the heart of storytelling.
Even if that means telling you your story sucks.
Or asking you, who would ever care about this? But they tell you what sucks with love. They guide you toward your best interest and illuminate a path of change, sentence by sentence.
If you're familiar, we talked about this when you all left the room the other day, but if you're familiar with the concept of bodhisattvas in Buddhism, essentially a Buddha soul that chooses to forego nirvana, to come back to this world of chaos for the aid of others, that they might achieve the same. Those of you students in the program, you'll realize that Valerie and these mentors are not just teachers. They've achieved a sort of professional paradise, and yet have chosen to reach back and pull us out of the dirt. When your time is up here, new students, I know you're out there, can't see much. You'll be glad to have known them. You will have been shaped by their mastery, and you'll have learned to be a master of your own, in a way. We know this because there's something immediate about their influence.
Our class has achieved great things, but we are not selfish enough to think that we are an end product. Our paths are only beginning, and we are just lucky to be a link in this chain. You only need to look at the new cohort to see that the best is yet to come. We saw the seeds of that beginning earlier this morning at our closing circle. But I want to bring us all back to our beginning. Fall 2019, our first residency, when we inscribed our intentions on what we thought that the next 2.5 years would be. When all else fails, let go, one of us wrote. Remain honest. Do your best. In my heart opens a flower. The view changes, the flame remains. Confidently claiming my Black woman power. Good now, great later. Always privilege joy. Open is an activity. Let your heart be your pen. Striving, becoming, forward, not backward, and perhaps to bloom. Reveal truth, connect family, heal history. I will listen, learn, and serve. Continue the struggle to bloom and be free. Be in that car driving it. Inhabit the psyches of your characters. See what's working and nurture it. Keep writing to find joy. You are at the center. Write the truth, be fearless, love yourself. Tell the truth, care for yourself. Have a good cry, then keep writing. Trust, learn, and become the process. Remember who you are, free. Write, speak, be what is true. And remember this always, you are loved. We found a space where our honesty and authenticity are honored and the full contours of us and our worlds are embraced. It's only fitting that James gets the last word.
To all of the folks in this room who express themselves in different ways, we've been employed in this endeavor to tell stories that change the world for the better. It's not for grades or the face of this institution or to give anyone a better reputation. If we are not here to make connections with one another and to reach across to our neighbor and to see a divine spark in them that rests in us, we're here for the wrong reasons. The sun is but a morning star, and it shines on an infantile race, the human race. But because we have been here, we know our words hold the seeds of a better society, of a more inclusive and meaningful civilization. It's so easy to be cynical. It is so necessary not to be. Thank you all.
Good afternoon. In case you forgot, I'm Nate Cohn. I was introduced a little while ago, but I don't remember that introduction, so I'm taking the liberty of introducing myself again. I should say that, just so you know, we did not have time to rehearse this whole afternoon, so please bear with us. We'll do our best to get through it without too many missteps. In terms of the student speaker for the screenwriting side, I sort of surveyed the students, and there was a groundswell of support for one particular student to give this particular speech. I think you're going to know this as we go through the day today, that there is a difference in demeanor and temperament between
the screenwriting students and the narrative nonfiction students. But I'll let you figure that out for yourself. Our speaker for the screenwriting students is Kendra Davidson. I'll tell you a little more about her when we go through the list of graduating students, but just one line that Kendra is a Jill of all trades. She wrote that line herself. And she is an actress, singer, playwright, director, choreographer, and now she's a screenwriter. Kendra, come on up.
I wrote mine down. I wasn't as succinct as the other students, so bear with me. On behalf of my classmates, I'd like to thank everybody who came here in person. We know that it was a risk for you to show up, and the fact that you thought that all of us were worth that risk just means, well, it probably means you should reevaluate your priorities. Seriously, there are actual humans who paid thousands of dollars for this degree and they did not miss showing up. So, but thank you so much. And bless your heart. That takes real courage. So you are aware that me and my classmates, we are concluding a 2.5-year program, and we spent about a 1.5 years of that staring at each other through a screen. And that was pretty traumatic. And we've been trying to make that up this week, but we know we don't get that time back. So in order to keep from triggering us, the world-changing event that we're all trying to vaccinate our way out of will be referred to now as any other P word I can think of, except for that one. No, not that P word. My parents are here, not that one. And so also, though, don't cough, because convincing enough cough, you will see this room clear out like you've never seen a room clear out in your life. So I realize it's hard to hold that in, and it feels like dying, but just try. So as you know, there are 2 disciplines in this program. There is narrative nonfiction and screenwriting. And to give you a little bit more info, the narrative nonfiction side is basically the side of intellectuals who will end up writing the essays and books and journals that will shape education for years to come. And the screenwriting side, we are responsible for TV. Yep. So if me being extremely overdressed didn't tip you off, I'm on the TV side. But they're both really big and serious and important programs. We are responsible for letting your kids know that yes, they can be Dr. Batman, Lawyer, Spider-Man. And our director, Nick Cohn, as you just re-met him, has pushed us all through this Pantene Pro V to academic success. And with this group, Nate, that takes skill. Additionally, for those of you who do not know, all of us are mentored by some real professionals. They work in the industry, they stay up late nights, early mornings, and they still find time to smile at us via Zoom every other week or so and tell us, yes, I think there is something in that script that we can make a good story out of, even when there absolutely is not. And so to them, I do say thank you. We couldn't have done it without you all, even those of you who took on students that you weren't assigned to. We appreciate it. Looking at you, Danielle. So let's get started, shall we? Now that we have that under wraps, I want to tell you a little bit about my mentor. She couldn't be here today. She couldn't fly in from LA to be here in person because, again, her priorities are straight. But I have to give her a thank you. Valerie Woods, when I met her, I had only been a screenwriter for maybe 6 months. I asked Valerie Boyd and Nate if I could specifically have Valerie Woods, because I was enamored by her. And if you've ever heard her say hello, she says, hello. Not like, hello, hello. And she is a titan. And so I would just like to say thank you to Valerie for your guidance and patience. And a fun fact, Valerie Woods mentored over my first 2 screenplays that I've ever written in my life. And both of them have advanced in major competitions. Valerie Woods is a bad woman, and that takes magic. In front of me and in front of you are my classmates, and they are what I consider the warrior class. I don't know if anybody has ever seen the movie Greenland. It's one of those movies that shouldn't exist, but does. Just want to let you know, by giving us these degrees, you've signed up for a lot more of that. Anyway, Greenland is an American disaster thriller, so like a Wednesday, if you will. And so in the movie, a comet is coming to Earth. It's going to wipe out all of mankind. The government has decided to put all these people on a plane who they think are a key to restarting humanity, these necessary people like, you know, doctors and lawyers and scientists and things like that. Well, if it was real, my classmates would absolutely be on that plane. In front of me sits lawyers like Stephen and teachers like Michelle and Brandon and Mike. There's an Army veteran, chaplain, woman of God, degreed physicist like Denise. And I swear I did not make that up. And there's even a software integration techie like myself. And we're all writers. So, you see, your daughter can be Dr. Batman the Princess. And again, you're welcome for us giving them that creativity. But obviously none of us are afraid to do hard things because we've been doing them. And through it all, we didn't quit at all. And that takes determination. And I realize how motivational and great this sounds. I didn't intend for it to be that motivational, but it sounds pretty great because they are pretty great. And at this point, we've been fighting through this thing for 2 years. And not only are we fighting, we are winning in the midst of this pancreatic. So yes. My classmates told me some of the stuff they had gotten into to keep their heads above water. And all I could think of when they were telling me some of the things that they were doing during this Panasonic is, wow, we really missed each other. Let me tell you what I mean. So Denise, the Reverend physicist, took a painting. And she paints these beautiful pictures of the ocean, the waves. And the paint glows in the dark, right? And they're gorgeous. And looking at them, all I could think was, wow, she really missed us. All she's been painting are the oceans she would cross to come see us again, right? And then there's TJ. TJ started boxing. Now, he said it was for fitness, but I know the truth. I know what's really up. And I'm like, well, TJ's so mad that he can't be with us, he just started punching stuff. It's crazy. And then Chris, congrats by the way, had a whole baby, and I'm just touched that he missed us so much he created an entire human to keep him company while he was away from us. And my favorite, my classmate, Laura Jean. Laura Jean, without even trying, is a very helpful and considerate person. And did you know that Laura Jean wrote on one of the most popular shows in the last few years, The Punisher? Well, you know now. So, how did Laura Jean, a screenwriting giant in the making, survive during the pandemonium? She bought patio furniture for her squirrels. And I thought, man, this selfless giving person misses being able to help us so much that she's helping anything that moves, diseases and all. And that, Laura Jean, that takes some really big nuts. I tell you, my classmates, they really are amazing people. And I'll miss the sing-alongs in TJ's car, the after-class bar hangouts in the hotel, the lunch dates that we could never return from on time to save our lives. So sorry, Nate, we really did try. I'm happy to see you all move on to what's waiting for you because you really deserve it. You earned it. And don't let anybody tell you different. So lastly, before I go, I really do have to say this because I'm a first-generation student in every sense of the word. So I want to thank my family and friends. A lot of them couldn't be here. They stayed back in Texas because, again, priorities, all right? But for those of you who are here, I owe a huge thank you to my partner in most things, initially my writing. He's brilliant. He's a writer, a story breaker, and an original storyteller who welcomed me into an entire family of storytellers during the pandemic. I mean, the table reads he put together, the late night homework assignments he helped me break story for, constant encouragement, even when I wanted to quit and become an assassin, because that would be easier than this. And during fellowship season with me and for so many other things, thank you, profound. That takes a lot of love. Thank you to my sister, my best friend, Ebony. Growing up, there wasn't much we got along doing. And to be fair, what does a 16-year-old have to talk to a 6-year-old about besides how not to be annoying? But when we turned on that TV, we were in sync. It was hours of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel and Interview with the Vampire and Dawson's Creek. So thank you for letting me watch what Daddy said I couldn't watch. And because of you, you little rebel, I fell in love with story. And you gave me the best kind of company, which was cinema. I realize now that you only did that so I could make you a sister housewife, but it's fine. A deal is a deal. Thank you to my dad, Greg. I remember when you first got a camcorder, and I'd follow you around all day waiting for the red light to go on. And you had that camera on, and I was just summoned to the screen. And the words of the weeks you made me learn, I could be quite the sesquipedalian. The hooked on phonics lessons 3 times a week, now I'm a wordsmith. The quotes you made me memorize to keep me motivated, like my favorite, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, by Arthur Ashe. You were a major architect of this charismatic writer, singer, actress that you see in front of you. And lastly, my mommy. You knew I'd be a writer. When I was 8, she helped me into this essay contest. I don't even remember what it was about, but I got a scholarship to college. And when I was 13, she made me test into this liberal arts magnet academy. And for 4 years, this woman drove me an hour each way, to and from school, every single day. And since I've gotten into this program, she's come to every single residency. Do not make fun of me about Brenda, my mom. She drove with me 15 hours from Texas and 15 hours back. Every morning she would drive me to campus. She would pick me up for lunch and come pick me up after school and take me home. If I tell my mommy I want to do something, she believes that I will do it, and she makes sure that I show up to do it, even if I want to be a Wonder Woman writer software integrator. And that, mommy, that takes unshakable faith. I can't mean it enough when I say thank you. In closing, I want to say to my classmates and to all the classmates behind us that whether you decide to teach or go into the film industry or whatever it is, you'll be warned that it isn't for the faint of heart. But if we've proven anything, it's that our hearts are not faint. It's been almost 2 years of fighting our way through this pantomime, but again, we're winning. If anyone ever tries to tell you what it takes to be great, you tell them you already know. You have it. We have courage. We have more than enough skill. We are magic. We have deep love for what we do. We are dedicated, and plus so many people have unshakable faith in us. And if nothing else, like Lord Jean, we've got some very big nuts. And now we have MFA degrees. That said, a heartfelt congratulations to my narrative writing cohorts, class of 2021. Very well done.
Thank you, Kendra. It's lovely. We're going to have, because we are a two-pronged program here, we're going to have 2 keynote speakers to talk to our graduating students. The first keynote speaker is on the screenwriting side, and his name is Seif Mann. Seif is an award-winning writer, director, and producer. He directed and executive produced the multiple Emmy Award-winning series Free Ray Sean, which recently won 2 NAACP Image Awards and WGA Award. He was an executive producer and director of the pilot of Raising Dion and the co-creator, executive producer of The Breaks, which one of our faculty mentors, John Strauss, also worked on. He also wrote and directed and executive produced the original TV movie on which the series The Breaks was based. To date, he has directed over 50 episodes of television, including episodes of The Wire, Homeland, and most recently, the pilot of Blind Spotting. He has been nominated for a DGA Award, 6 NAACP Image Awards, and won 2 NAACP Image Awards. And he's a graduate of Morehouse College and of the Graduate Film Program at NYU. So please welcome, it's my honor to present to you Seth Mann.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. To Dr. Nate Cohn and the other esteemed members of the faculty and staff, thank you for the invitation to address the graduating class of 2021 today. To my friend, John Strauss, thank you for suggesting me to my dad and my oldest son who made the trip with me from Atlanta. Thank you for riding down. And to the University of Georgia Grady College graduating class of 2021, thank you for your ear, your dedication to the craft of screenwriting, and your future contribution to the canon. Please remember to shout me out when you get your first Emmy or your first Oscar. Speaking of first, this is my first one of these. Maybe my last, depending on how it goes, we'll see. I struggled a little bit with what to talk about today. I mean, it's your graduation. As our now President Joe Biden would say, it's a big fucking deal. So I wanted to say something memorable, inspiring, necessary. I thought about talking about the importance of story, how you all hold within your pens the power to change the world. But you know that already. I doubt any of you would have spent the last 2 years pursuing your master's in screenwriting if you regarded it as a casual hobby. You know the power to create, to give life, which is exactly what writers do, is the single most awesome power that we as humans have. It's in that regard that we are made in God's image. We create universes, worlds, people, and in doing so, every once in a while, we change the world we inhabit. So, writers are godlike. We know that already. Not necessary to talk about today. And then I thought, maybe I should talk about the importance of diversity and representation in the worlds you build, not only in the characters you create, but in the rooms you make to create them. But again, you guys wouldn't be here if you were idiots. Those of us that can think and can see know that an America governed by systems of white supremacy is no longer sustainable, if it ever was. Certainly the same can be said of the industry that makes commerce from our art. And frankly, the commerce that we generate with our art is greater when we embrace the full spectrum of the human experience. Shonda Rhimes, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Ryan Coogler, Adele Lim have shown us that. So racism and sexism bad, diversity and inclusion good, no idiots among us, no need to spend a lot of time on that. I watched a bunch of commencement addresses on YouTube. There's some really incredible speeches out there. I recommend that you watch some when you get home. So many wonderful insights. Don't give up. Never lose sight of your dreams. Your failures are the foundation of your success. All these things are true, but they've been said and are available free to you on the internet. So what can I tell you? I found myself a little frustrated. What can I offer you that is unique that you've never heard? Well, nothing. Because there's nothing new under the sun. We know that already. But is there some something, some perspective, some insight that I alone can offer you, some worldview, some principle that is uniquely my own, something I know that you don't, that I have to share. And this was exciting to me because these questions are not unlike the questions I ask myself, and I imagine some of you do, whenever you sit down to write. What story do I have to tell? Or rather, what story do I have to tell? You can only answer that question by looking into yourself. It reminds me of the story of the indebted widow. Any of y'all read the Bible? There's a story I love from 2 Kings chapter 4. It begins. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha. Elisha was a big-time prophet back in biblical times, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take away my sons to be his slaves." So Elisha said to her, "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" Tell me, what do you have in the house? I know y'all didn't come for a sermon, and Lord knows I'm not qualified to give one, but I do think this story is relevant, in particular to writers. The widow responds that all she has is a jar of oil, and Elisha tells her to borrow vessels from neighbors, fill them with oil, and sell them. She does. And eventually, sell so much oil that she is able to pay off her debts and live off the rest. I think it's relevant to writers because so much of what you have to offer the world and what will sustain you in it is already in your house. The house of your lived experience, the house of your imagination, your training, your relationships, your dreams, your passions, your frustrations, your pain, and yes, your failures. That's all the stew, the primordial funk that makes your oil your own. People always say, write what you know. I say, write what you alone know. The fact of the matter is, even in biblical times before Kroger and Publix, Costco, and Instacart, oil wasn't that hard to come by. Why this lady's oil sell so well? I'm not a cook, but I've been making these omelets lately that are kind of unbelievable. Usually mushrooms, spinach, sun-dried tomatoes, little mozzarella, lactose intolerant. But the secret ingredient is the oil. Last show I was on, the beat camera operator, brother named Malcolm, shout out to all brothers named Malcolm, asked if he could talk to me in private. I said, of course. I didn't know what was up. Set gossip, had I offended him somehow? Was he worried about the COVID protocols on set? I didn't know. But he was doing a great job and I wanted him to keep doing it. So I figured, let me listen so we could sort it out. It was nothing like that. He had these olive oils infused with different spices and fruits he wanted to share with me. He didn't have enough bottles to offer everybody in the crew, but since I was nice, be nice to people, he wanted to give me some. I debated whether to take the basil-infused oil or the blood orange. Eventually, I took the blood orange because he said the basil was a safer choice. And when I thought about it, I felt like I've heard tell of basil-infused olive oil before. I wanted to try something different, something a little dangerous. And man, I'm glad I did. My omelets have never been so good. I'm not a biblical scholar. I'm basically making this up, but I like to think this widow took that oil, infused it with orange peels or chili peppers, something that made it her own, made it unique to her house, made it her own story. She sold the oil she alone could sell. What is your story that you alone can tell? Mine starts with Miriam's rules. Not long after I finished Morehouse, I went on a grad school tour at one of the schools in NYU. I talked to the dean about the possibility of going to film school. I wasn't sure that was the right thing for me, so she suggested I take their 6-week immersive film boot camp over the summer to give me a taste of what film school would be like. I went home. I was living with my parents after accidentally graduating a semester early from college. which is not something I recommend. There's nothing like moving home with your parents after being off on your own for 3.5 years. Anyway, my mom, Miriam, asked me about the trip. I told her about the boot camp and she said I should go. I told her I couldn't go. It was $5,000 and I didn't have the money. She said she'd help me pay for it. I told her I couldn't let her do that. I fashioned myself grown at 21 and I didn't. I insisted when I moved back in with my parents that I pay them rent. So I couldn't take her money. A grown man wouldn't do that. But she kept after me. I should let her help me. I should enroll in the boot camp. But I wouldn't have it. Finally, she asks, well, what do you want to do? I responded, I don't know. What do you mean? What do you want to do? I don't know. Well, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What are you going to do? This went on and on and on and on. It got uncomfortable. I wasn't sure why it got so uncomfortable or why it was making me angry, but it was, and she persisted even though I felt silent. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And finally I blurted out, I want to be a director. She said, good. And now you've got to do it. She told me, when I was your age, I wanted to be an actress. But I was scared. And I didn't tell anyone. And I didn't say it. And I am not an actress. But I'm your mother. And my job is to make you say it. And now that you've said it, you must do everything in your power to do it. So you're going to that boot camp, and you're going to let me help you. So I went. And then I went to film school. And here I am, a writer, a director, and a producer, because of Miriam's rules. No doubt you guys have already declared your desire to be screenwriters. You've crossed at least one Rubicon. You stood on the other side of the river and were brave enough to apply to UGA, to study the craft formally, and to actually put pen to paper or finger to key, whatever. Now you're here on this side with your Masters of Fine Art in Screenwriting. Congratulations to you. And to the Miriams in your lives, if you ever needed a push. But I'm here to tell you there will be more than one Rubicon on your journey. Don't think the decision to come get your master's is the last time you'll have to give voice to your dreams or face down your fears. It is a walk you will hopefully be on forever. Because if you're not chasing new dreams or defeating new fears, you're probably treading water. So that story that keeps gnawing at you, that you're scared to get wrong, that nobody thinks it's going to be that good anyway, lean into that. That's the story only you can tell. The pepper in your oil. When you find it, make sure you tell somebody you want to write it. And then follow Miriam's rules. They will not disappoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Seat, for that inspiring talk. Not just for the screenwriters, but for all the writers in the room. We really appreciate it. You see the faculty crowding in because they couldn't hear sitting in the back. So they are into this, just like you are, so they were crowding up so they could hear better, so just so you know. It's my pleasure now to introduce the speaker who will be speaking directly to the narrative nonfiction students, but again to all of us. You can look up Natasha Trethewey's bio and learn that she served two terms as the 19th Poet Laureate of the United States from 2012 to 2014. You'll see that she is the author of 5 collections of poetry, Monument, which was published in 2018 and longlisted for the National Book Award, Thrall, which was published in 2012, Native Guard, which was published in 2006, and for which she won the Pulitzer Prize. Bellocs Ophelia, which was published in 2002, and her first book of poetry, Domestic Work, published in 2000, which was selected by Rita Dove as the winner of the inaugural Kavi Kana Poetry Award for the best first book by an African-American poet, and also won both the 2001 Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Book Prize and the 2001 Lillian Smith Award for Poetry. Natasha is also the author of 2 books of nonfiction, which is our specialty here in this program. Her book, Beyond Katrina, A Meditation on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, appeared in 2010, and it was a meditation on the losses of Katrina in the Gulf Coast, where she is from. And her most recent book is a moving memoir called Memorial Drive, and it was published in 2020. Natasha did us the great honor of being here with our students yesterday and today to talk about Memorial Drive, which all the students on the nonfiction side of the program read. And Natasha did a book tour during the Pantronic, Kendra. She did a book tour via Zoom, but this was her first time sitting in a room with readers. And it was so moving for us and so moving for her to be in the room together talking about this incredible memoir, Memorial Drive. If you have not read it, I urge you to put it on your book list. Natasha's bio also tells you that she is the recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Guggenheim Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, Beinecke Library at Yale, the Bunting Fellowship Program at Harvard. She's a Northwestern University professor, Board of Trustees professor of English, and in 2012 she was named Poet Laureate of the state of Mississippi, and in 2013 was inducted to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She's also a member of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame, which is housed here at the University of Georgia. What her bio doesn't tell you, though, is Natasha's impact on her fellow writers as a writer and as a citizen of the world. A couple of my faculty members had personal stories about how Natasha has impacted their lives, and I asked them to give me permission to share those stories with you. You'll meet our faculty later, but one of our faculty members, Moni Basu, said that in the winter of 2007, she wrote, "I spent time with Natasha with the intent of writing a profile of her for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She had just bought a new house in Decatur and graciously invited me over." Moni was a long-time war correspondent for the AJC and later for CNN. So she writes, "I knew I was leaving for Iraq soon to embed with an army unit. Natasha asked me how things would be for me in a war zone, and then assigned a copy of her new book at the time, Native Guard, a collection of poems that honor her own mother, as well as the erased history of her native South. Later that year, Natasha won the Pulitzer Prize for Native Guard, which the judges said was haunted by the intersection of national and personal experience. What was really special about Natasha's gift to me, though," Moni wrote, "was that she thought to give me an audio version of the book, knowing that I would not always be able to read in the harsh conditions of Iraq. What she didn't know is that her words, carefully crafted and positioned, transported me to another world as I, fraught with anxiety and fear, tried to fall asleep each night. Natasha's voice, her cadence, calmed me like a mother's lullaby. In a way, she saved me, Moni wrote. I felt that way again as I read Natasha's latest work, Memorial Drive, which allowed me to honor my own mother and grieve for her all over again. For me, personally, Natasha Trethewey, whether she's writing poetry or prose, has been a beacon of excellence and integrity. I find Natasha to be a guiding light, a model for how to conduct oneself admirably in the world, as both a writer and as a human being. My other fellow faculty member, John T. Edge, wrote about Natasha. Through her witness and her writing, Natasha speaks for and speaks to her home state of Mississippi. She listens for all that place gives and all that place takes. She listens for all that place, whether that place for you is Mississippi or Georgia or wherever. She listens for all that place gives and all that place takes. We readers get to eavesdrop on that loving and fierce conversation. When we listen closely, we realize that Mississippi is America writ large and writ slant. We also realize that Natasha Trethewey is our national seer. Please join me in welcoming Pulitzer Prize winner Natasha Trethewey.
Thank you. Good afternoon, graduates, faculty and staff, friends and family. This is indeed an honor for me to address you today as you embark upon the next phase of your life's work. I'd like to talk about abiding metaphors and my own journey toward finding a calling, the onset of the necessity and desire to write, and the wellspring of a writer's material. Let me begin with Robert Frost and my father's belief that one must have a proper poetical education in the metaphor, in figurative values. Frost wrote, "What I am pointing out is that unless you are at home in the metaphor, you are not safe anywhere. Because you are not at ease with figurative values, you don't know the metaphor in its strength and its weakness. You are not safe in science. You are not safe in history." Writing my memoir at the same time that I was compiling my first retrospective, Monument, Poems New and Selected, I could see the many ways my experience had prepared me, setting me on the course of what would become my life's work. I can remember back to my first semester in graduate school when I came across these words from James Baldwin that spoke to me on a primal level. This is the only real concern of the artist, to recreate out of the disorder of life that order which is art. This was before I had acknowledged to myself why I was compelled to write. I allowed myself only to recognize in the vaguest sense that I had had a disorderly life, the impact of traumas both national and personal. I had not yet begun to think in terms of my existential wounds, but there they were, demanding my attention. As the poet Mark Doty wrote, our metaphors go on ahead of us. Back then, Baldwin's declaration was a clarion call, and it became a motto for me. Though I've added many others over the years, as I'm sure you have, it still is as meaningful to me now as when I first encountered it, I think, because it gets at the nature of the chaos brought on by existential wounds and the need to make order not only as a means to survive, but also to thrive. For graduate school, I had gone to Massachusetts, far away from the deep South that was my home, in order to see it from a distance so that I might make sense of how the place I'd come from, its larger history, as well as my individual history in it, had shaped me. My mother had come of age in Mississippi during the era of Jim Crow and at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. She had grown up steeped in the metaphors that comprised the mind of the South, the white South, and thus had not missed the paradox of my birth on Confederate Memorial Day. A child of miscegenation, a word that entered the American lexicon during the Civil War in a pamphlet. It had been conceived as a hoax by a couple of journalists to drum up opposition to Lincoln's re-election through the threat of amalgamation and mongrelization. As long as I can remember, I've known that my parents' interracial marriage had been illegal when I was born, a fact that had rendered me illegitimate in the eyes of the law. And from a very early age, I was profoundly aware of white supremacist notions of racial difference and hierarchy rooted in America's original sin. Growing up in the Deep South, I witnessed everywhere around me the metaphors meant to maintain a collective narrative about its people and history, defining social place and hierarchy through a matrix of selective memory, willed forgetting, and racial determinism. Because it was a society based on the myths of innate racial difference, a hierarchy based on notions of supremacy, purported white superiority and its conjoined twin, black inferiority, the language used to articulate that thinking was rooted in the unique experience of white Southerners. The role of metaphor is not only to describe our experience of reality, metaphor also shapes how we perceive reality. Thus, in the century following the Civil War, the South, in the white mind of the South, became deeply entrenched in the idea of a noble and romantic past. It was moonlight and magnolias, chivalry and paternalism. The blacks living within her borders when they were good were children to be guided, looked after, protected from their own folly, mules of the earth, darkies with the light of service in their hearts. When they stepped out of line, they were bad niggers, from whom white women, carriers of the pure bloodline, needed to be protected. They were animals to be husbanded into a prison system modeled on the plantation system, or worse, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. On the monumental landscape, in textbooks, they were unstoried, but for the stories told about them. In my 12th grade history book, they were singing and happy in the quarters, better off under a master's care. According to my teacher, they were passive recipients of white benevolence who'd never fought for their own freedom, even as nearly 200,000 fought in the Civil War. And when they seemed exceptional in the mind of the South, they were magical. You're smart for a black girl, pretty for a black girl, articulate, not like the rest of them. The South of my childhood was a landscape overwritten with a dominant narrative, bearing almost completely any others. But for the streets named for Martin Luther King Jr., the monuments were mostly to Confederate soldiers, staunch segregationists, governors, and Klansmen, often one and the same. The textbooks I read glorified the institution of slavery, devoted little time to Reconstruction and the horrors inflicted upon African Americans in the aftermath of Reconstruction, the Jim Crow era, and the Civil Rights Movement. I felt both erased and then penciled in again as the descendant of a caricature, the raggedy black minstrel who'd given his name to the whole race. I felt profoundly E.O. Wilson's words, Homo sapiens is the only species to suffer psychological exile. I was an outsider in my own homeland, my Mississippi, with its myriad contradictions, home to the most southern place on earth, so named for its brutal history of injustice, racial oppression, violence, and lynching. My Mississippi, birthplace of the blues, a literary tradition rich and fertile as Delta soil, one of the poorest states in the nation. My Mississippi, with its terrible beauty, to borrow from William Butler Yeats, a terrible beauty born on the backs of slaves and through the resistance of their descendants, the astonishing resilience of African Americans in the face of Jim Crow, a terrible beauty born in spite of it. As in W.H. Auden's memorial to William Butler Yeats, Mad Ireland hurt you into poetry, Mississippi inflicted my first wound. That existential wound led me, as poet Robert Hayden put it, to need to write in order to correct the misapprehensions of African American history. That is American history. To challenge the hallowed falsehoods of received history and to show how the abuses and misuses of history legitimated systems of oppression, both past and present. What I would encounter later, the origins of my second and deepest wound, intersect on Memorial Drive in Atlanta. Geography is fate, wrote Ralph Ellison, adapting Heraclitus' axiom to the idea of place rather than character. In Georgia, a hulk of ball granite called Stone Mountain serves as a lasting metaphor for the white mind of the South. The nation's largest monument to the Confederacy, it rises out of the ground like the head of a submerged giant. The nostalgic dream of Southern heroism and gallantry emblazoned on its brow. In bas-relief, the enormous figures of Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, and Jefferson Davis. I live near the base of the mountain, in its shadow, dividing my time between Georgia and Mississippi. As some of you know from reading Memorial Drive, my mother died there. In both geographies, public monuments and the associated rituals of memory and memorialization provided the nascent framework for my interest in the intersections and contentions between personal and public memory, the creation of cultural memory and collective history with its absences, its erasures and omissions, and notions of voice and authority in the making and documenting. Those who can create the dominant historical narrative, wrote historian David Blight, will achieve political and cultural power. We are fighting these battles right now. If part of my calling has been about pushing back against received knowledge and the abiding metaphors of racial difference and hierarchy, the other part has to do with grappling with the images that haunt me, the abiding metaphors of my personal history, the landscape of my consciousness. When I was 3 years old, I nearly drowned in a hotel pool in Mexico. My earliest memory is of what seemed a long moment, as if I were suspended there, looking up through a ceiling of water, the high sun barely visible overhead. I do not recall being afraid as I sank, only that I was enthralled by what I could see through that strange and wavering lens. My mother, who could not swim, leaning over the edge, arms outstretched, reaching for me. She was in the line of the sun, and what she did not block radiated around her head, her face like an annular eclipse, dark and ringed with light. I have just one photograph as record of our journey. In it, I am alone. There are mountains in the distance behind me, and I am sitting on a mule. On the back, in my father's elegant script, Tasha, Monterey, 1969. Of all the photographs of my early childhood, this one, I can see it now, shows me what each of my parents in different ways needed me to know. It was my father's idea to place me on the back of the mule. My father, who, perhaps oblivious to his own metaphors of animal husbandry, had referred to me in one of his poems as a crossbreed. The photograph was perhaps his version of a linguistic joke, the sight gag of a mixed-race child writing her namesake, animal origin of the word mulatto. My mother, knowing very well what the visual metaphor meant, could not have thought it was funny. They would have agreed only that I needed to understand it. You are not safe in science. You are not safe in history. Whatever hope she'd had early on when they were first in love and thinking that love might be enough to counter the challenges of racism I would face, the country had by then shown her otherwise, that love alone would not protect me. She knew that as a mixed-race child, halfway between them, I would ultimately be alone in the journey toward an understanding of self, my place in the world, yet carrying the invisible burdens of history, borne on the back of metaphor. She knew, too, that language would be used to name and thereby attempt to constrain me. Mongrel, mulatto, half-breed, nigger. And that, as on the back of the mule, I would be both bound to and propelled by it. My mother wanted only that I not be destroyed by it. Some select image of the past is always being delivered to our senses. Adrienne Rich. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi. Over the years, as my mind has turned again and again to that early memory of my near drowning in Mexico, the image of my mother above me, arms outstretched, a corona of light around her face. Did I know then that it reflected an iconic image of the Virgin Mary? The mind works such that we see and perceive new things always through the lens of what we have already seen. What came first then? The vision of my mother as I was sinking deeper into the pool, or religious paintings and altarpieces depicting Mary in much the same way. What matters is the transformative power of metaphor and the stories we tell ourselves about the arc and meaning of our lives. Since that day decades ago, the imagery of the memory has remained the same, I think, because I have rehearsed it, telling the story of my near drowning again and again. What has changed is how I've understood what I saw, how I've come to interpret the metaphors inherent in my way of recalling the events. Scientists tell us there are different ways that the brain records and stores memory, that trauma is inscribed differently than other types of events. To survive a trauma, one must be able to tell a story about it. Thus, if the story I began to tell myself after the seemingly small trauma of almost drowning was that my mother had been there, that I was in no real danger, that she was somehow ethereal, a light-ringed saint to whom I might send up my prayers for salvation, the story evolved over the years to create a narrative of self that could in turn contain yet another trauma and give it meaning. In Poetry as Survival, Gregory Orr asked the survivors questions about violence. How could I have been that close and not been destroyed by it? Why was I spared? Questions that can initiate in a writer the quest for meaning and purpose. But this quest born out of trauma doesn't simply lead the survivor forward, he writes. First, it leads him or her backward, back to the scene of the trauma, where the struggle must take place with the demon or angel who incarnates the mystery of violence and the mystery of rebirth and transformation. He is referring to Lorca's idea of duende, a demon that drives an artist, causing trouble or pain and an acute awareness of death. Of the demon's effect on an artist's work, Lorca wrote, "In trying to heal the wound that never heals lies the strangeness." So let me go back to that dream I had just after my mother's death, the one that started me on this journey. 3 weeks gone, my mother and I are together again. As if to bring her back, I have journeyed to this place of shadows where we walk now, side by side, neither of us speaking. Comfortable in our silence, we could go on walking like this forever. But then, out of the darkness, a man emerges, coming toward us. Even in the dream, I know that he has killed her, and yet I smile, lifting my hand and speaking a greeting as he passes. "Hey, Big Joe." My mother turns to me then, speaks her last words. "Do you know what it means to have a wound that never heals?" In the center of her forehead is a hole the size of a quarter, from which comes a light so bright and piercing, it seems I am staring at the sun, her face nothing but light ringed in the darkness that surrounds us. Walking on as before, we meet him again. This time he is holding a gun, aiming at her head. This time I know I must save her, so I throw myself in the bullet's path, shout no, waking now to that single word, my own voice wrenching me from sleep. In that moment of waking, I was transformed. The world as I knew it and myself in it were not the same. Through the metaphor of the dream, I had acknowledged the undeniable presence of my deepest wound. Had I read Lorca before hearing my mother's last words in the dream? I doubt that I had, but something of the past was delivering me, again, a familiar scene, that early image of my mother's face above me, eclipsing the sun as I looked up at her from beneath the water's surface. Only now it was in the negative, a reversal of light and dark that transformed her face into pure light ringed in darkness, the light all-consuming and piercing. It was delivering something else, too. That moment down on the track around the football field after we'd run away, when Joel appeared before me and I smiled, waved, and spoke a greeting to him. The simple gesture that saved my life, traded it for my mother's. Since that first dream, all of my adult life, I've lived with the guilt that I'm implicated in my mother's death, or more precisely, that she is dead because I am not. I did not always know this guilt explicitly, though I could feel something akin to it gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. Memory believes before knowing remembers, William Faulkner wrote. Over the years, as I applied the dream again and again to the ongoing narrative of my life, I began to see it as a bookend to my earliest memory of trauma, as if my earliest memory had indeed provided the framework of the dream, bracketing the before and after of my life in relation to my mother's death. Being pulled from the water into her arms was akin to a baptism. I had witnessed something strange, not unlike the visions reported by the faithful that set them on a path of devotion, of meaningfulness and purpose. My mother, through the wavering lens of water, seemed distant and not fully embodied, an apparition, the dead woman she was to become, but with the light surrounding her, as if she'd already undergone her hagiography. In the narrative of my life, which is the look backward rather than forward into the unknown and unstoried future, I emerged from the pool as from a baptismal font, changed, reborn, as if I'd been shown what would be my calling even then. This is how the past fits into the narrative of our lives, gives meaning and purpose. Even my mother's death is redeemed in the story of my calling, made meaningful rather than merely senseless. It is the story I tell myself to survive. My writing life began not long after that, and I've been trying to answer my mother's last question to me: do you know what it means to have a wound that never heals? Ever since. As you go forward from this moment, answering your own callings, harnessing the power of your own abiding metaphors, I wish for you the force of the driving demon or angel, that your existential wounds be filled with light, and that you return that light to the world through your life's work. Congratulations, class of 2021.
To our new graduates with the MFA degree, Dr. Cohn will begin with the screenwriters.
Look at them all lining up. I'd like to say a few things before we actually meet our students and confer these degrees. Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Springston for, as Valerie said, for his support for this program from the very beginning. I believe we've now completed 5 years of this program, and I always say it takes 5 years to start anything new, for it to get up and running, and we're definitely there. The most exciting thing to me in this program, or one of them, is meeting the new cohort of students on the first day. And we just met our new cohort this past week, and the student, I shouldn't say this in front of these students, but it appears to me that every year the students get better and better. I don't know how to save myself from that, but I guess I won't try. Our residency this time has been a hybrid because of the pandemonium. And one thing in academia we've learned over the past year is how to do hybrid. So with this particular residency, over half of our faculty mentors and about a third of our students weren't able to make it because of problems associated with COVID. So I'd first just like to recognize our faculty mentors, an extraordinary group of working professionals whose unflinching commitment to this program and to our students never ceases to amaze me. I'm incredibly proud of each and every one of them, and proud to call them friends. With us virtually today over the wonder of Zoom are the following mentors. Connie Verge. Connie's credits go on forever. She created the TV series Savannah and the reboot of the series Charmed. Other shows she has produced and written for include Royal Pains, In Plain Sight, Judging Amy, Boston Public, and Ally McBeal. Raman Seri. Raman is a New York City-based writer-director who has written and directed 2 acclaimed feature films, Miriam and Loveless. He is currently writing the pilot for a limited series set in Chicago, and he has taught screenwriting at NYU, Columbia University, and St. Lawrence College. John Strauss, who we've mentioned once or twice before. John's credits include the feature films There's Something About Mary, Santa Claus 2, Santa Claus 3. I don't know what happened to Santa Claus 1. And Free Birds, a computer animated feature. On the TV side, John has been an executive producer and showrunner on over 10 different television series, including Mozart in the Jungle and the Peabody Award-winning drama David Makes Man, which you can now watch on HBO. And he also worked with Steve Mann on his series, The Breaks. Camille Tucker. Camille is an NAACP Image Award nominated professional writer with over 15 years of experience working in Los Angeles. Most recently, she co-wrote the screenplay for Lifetime's Emmy-nominated The Clark Sisters, the First Ladies of Gospel. That was directed by a friend of the program and one of our mentors from time to time, Christine Swanson. Camille is a Sundance alum who has sold scripts to Sony, Universal, New Line Cinema, Fox TV, and Disney. And she has worked with producers such as Robert De Niro, Jane Rosenthal, and the late John Singleton. Valerie Woods. Valerie is an LA-based television and film writer, producer, and also a publisher, editor, and author. She is currently working as writer and co-executive producer on an upcoming Netflix drama series. She's worked in that same position for season 4 of Queen Sugar, which aired on Oprah Winfrey Network. And she has written numerous episodes of series for CBS, Lifetime, Netflix, and Showtime. Actually, in the room with us here and on the stage, and I'd like to ask them to stand, are our other 2 faculty mentors. First, we have Tamlin Hall of the Suit and Tie. Tamlin studied screenwriting at UCLA and acting at Steppenwolf in Chicago. He has over 15 years of experience as an actor, writer, director, and producer. His award-winning feature film, Hold On, garnered claims for its authentic depiction of mental illness and addiction. And his nonprofit arts organization, I'm Holding On, currently produces the uplifting documentary series, Hope Givers. You can sit down now. And we have Haji Han. Some of you might know Haji. He's a graduate of the Grady College, and he was actually a student in the first class I taught when I came to UGA. Haji's first feature film, Somebodies, which was shot in Athens, Georgia, premiered in competition at the Sundance Film Festival. And the TV series version of Somebodies, which Haji wrote, executive produced, directed, and starred in, was BET's first scripted series. Currently, he is a writer and co-executive producer on the Starz and Lionsgate television series Step Up, which just completed shooting its 3rd season in Atlanta. Thank you for joining us today, Haji and Tamlin. And now I'd like to introduce our students. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the students who are unable to be with us today, but who I am sure are watching this on Zoom. And my apologies to the students if I get any facts or figures wrong. I have a habit of getting things wrong. First graduate who's not with us, but with us on Zoom, is Jeanette Martinez. Jeanette came to us from Dalton State College here in Georgia with a degree in film studies. While at UGA, she developed and wrote her first television comedy series entitled Happy All the Time. And while working long distance with her faculty mentor, Haji Han, she is also beginning hands-on industry experience by working in production offices of series airing on the CW and Hulu. Parker Middleton, who many of you probably also know, has been a part of Grady ever since I've been here. Parker has been a part of the UGA community as an administrative leader and teacher for over 2 decades, earning a PhD at UGA after a career in advertising. So this is her second terminal degree. While with us and working with her faculty mentor, Valerie Boyd, Parker has written a docudrama about the Northern Cheyenne people and a feature screenplay entitled Teton. Sharon Nash Alexander. Prior to attending UGA, Sharon has had a long career as a television producer and reality casting producer. While at UGA, she worked with faculty mentor Connie Verge to write several feature-length screenplays and television pilots, and she has recently been hired to write a screenplay about the life of the iconic American singer Lola Falana, in addition to selling a show to HGTV that will air later this year. Jacob Van Huss. Jake is a film professor at East Tennessee State, where he has mentored thousands of students. He's been there a while. During his time with us and working with faculty mentor Tamlin Hall, Jake has written 3 screenplays and is developing a half-hour project with fellow UGA student Brandon Booker. Jake entered the program as a film director and is leading the program as a writer-director, which means he gets to shoot what he writes. Joseph Walderzak. Joe, also a university film professor, has written and directed some of his own original screenplays, including a feature-length film. While at UGA, Joe worked with faculty mentor Connie Verge to write both feature screenplays and TV pilots. He is also working on a short film with fellow UGA student Michelle Ford, which they're planning on filming soon. And with us in the room today are the following graduating students. Please come forward as I call your name. I'm going to say a little bit about you, so you can pause, I guess, at the top of the stairs so we can get a look at you. Brandon Booker. Brandon currently teaches cinema and television arts and interactive media at Elon University. During his time at UGA, Brandon worked with mentor Haji Han to complete the pilot for his television comedy, Horny Town, which he plans to shoot, produce, and direct in Horny Town, North Carolina, which is an actual place. He has also begun work on a new crime drama, The Broke, which he may still turn into a novel. I present Brandon Booker. Michael Cruz. Michael is a high school educator here in Georgia. During his time at UGA, he has worked with mentor Tamlin Hall. He's written numerous half-hour television pilots and a feature-length screenplay. Mike's compelling stories question life and spirituality, while family remains a consistent theme in his work. After graduation, he plans to become a professor of higher education and to continue to write teleplays. Congratulations. Kendra Davidson. As you know, she's a Jill of all trades. During her time here at UGA, she's written 3 one-hour pilots, a feature, a web series, and a short, and has co-written 2 half-hour comedy pilots and a horror feature film screenplay. In 2020, she was named a semifinalist in Final Draft's Big Break Screenwriting Competition. A Texas native, she is Broadway World Austin's Vocalist of the Decade and Performer of the Decade, and currently serves as the co-founder and creative director of a collective that brings theater opportunities to BIPOC artists in Austin. She is scheduled to go into pre-production on a web series in early 2022. Kendra Davidson. Michelle Ford. Michelle has worked in the entertainment industry for almost 30 years. While working with mentor Tamlin Hall at UGA, Michelle wrote several feature-length screenplays as well as a short film with fellow UGA student Joe Walderzak. Michelle's poetic work is confident, always voiced from the lens of relatable female protagonists. She recently accepted a teaching position at the Center for Creative Arts in Chattanooga and plans to produce independent films with her husband, who's also in the industry. Michelle Ford. Stephen Hoover. In addition to being a practicing attorney and a produced screenwriter, Stephen is also the author of 21 books. I've only read 16 of them, but I'm working on the rest. During his time working with mentor Connie Verge at UGA, Stephen has written several screenplays, as well as both half-hour comedies and one-hour drama television pilots. Stephen recently finished a half-hour comedy pilot co-written with fellow student Sharon Nash Alexander. Stephen, who has several projects currently in development, just joined the Writers Guild of America. Congratulations. Laura Jean Leal. My grade school was called Leal School, by the way. Prior to joining the MFA program, Laura Jean worked on various TV shows, including the Peabody Award-winning FX show, The Bridge, as a writer's assistant. She was also a writer on the Netflix Marvel series, The Punisher. While obtaining her MFA, Laura Jean worked as a staff writer for Jonas Curon's and the producers of Queen and Slim. In our program, she worked with mentor Valerie Boyd to write 2 pilots and a screenplay, and she's now a double dog, having previously earned a BBA from the Terry College. You will find her in Sanford Stadium on Saturdays in the fall. Congratulations. So that stuff doesn't fall on the floor. Christopher Saylor. As a university film professor, Chris has mentored thousands of students in film production and screenwriting during his time working with mentor Tamlin Hall. Chris has written 3 feature screenplays and a television pilot. His works are true page turners. The characters he writes are beautifully flawed and reflect what is ironic and contradictory in all of us. Denise Wallingford. During her time at UGA, working with mentor Connie Verge, Denise has written several screenplays as well as a 1-hour television pilot. Prior to attending UGA, Denise was a chaplain in the Navy, and her experience overseas continues to inspire and inform much of her writing. And at the end of the ceremony today, Denise will be offering a blessing. Denise Wallingford. And our final graduate in the screenwriting program today, T.J. Williams. A Grady College graduate with a degree in entertainment and media. Much like his mentor, Haji Han, T.J. has used his time with us to write his first screenplay, an animated comedy entitled No Sleep Cafe. While here, T.J. has also worked in the production offices of MTV's Floribama Shore and the feature film project One Way. TJ plans to move to Atlanta to continue his work in television and film. Congratulations. This concludes the candidates for Master of Fine Arts with emphasis in screenwriting. Please welcome Valerie Boyd.
Congratulations to the screenwriting graduates. It's now my pleasure to introduce the graduates in narrative nonfiction. We're actually going to do it a little differently this time. I'm going to introduce our faculty mentors who will introduce you to each of the graduates. When we first started this program, we encountered some resistance from other pockets of the university who objected to the journalism college having an MFA program. And I remember one of the naysayers said, we were talking about really getting wonderful professional writers on the screenwriting side and the narrative nonfiction side to work with our students one-on-one. And this naysayer said, you can't just hire your friends. And I said, but you don't know my friends. And so I'm happy to introduce my faculty of colleagues and friends who will then introduce you to our amazing graduates. So our newest faculty member is the award-winning novelist, filmmaker, and memoirist, Brigette Davis. Please stand, Brigette. The faculty members who will be joining us to introduce the graduates are longtime journalist and now full-time faculty member at the University of Florida, Moni Malabasu. One of the premier writers about the South and about food and place in the country. You've seen his byline in the New York Times. You may have seen his most recent book, The Pot Liquor Papers. John T. Edge. Award-winning writer of numerous books of nonfiction, a member of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame, and a person whose book, Praying for Sheetrock, was declared by the New York Times as one of the most important narratives of the 20th century, Melissa Fay Green. My good friend and colleague who used to be she was the founding director of the Knight Chair in Journalism at the University of Georgia, the Knight Chair in Health and Medical Journalism. And she started at UGA the year after I did in that role. And she retired from that role, and I had to allow her to be retired for 30 days before I could hire her to teach in this program. My great friend and colleague, Pat Thomas. And Pulitzer Prize-winning narrative editor who recently retired from CNN, and we were lucky enough to get her into this program, Jan Winburn. So I'm going to invite them up to introduce the students, and I will get to hand out smiles and hugs as they introduce you to our outstanding narrative nonfiction graduates.
Hi, everyone. Will Alfred, in his writing, in his work as an art editor and as a director of content for the state of Georgia, in his deep study of photographs, sees the outline of the past within the present and sees the outlines of the present in the briefly captured past. He looks for what seemed at the time to have been promised. He looks at what happened and what has been lost. Will was lucky to spend great swaths of his childhood and teenage years on the beaches between Panama City and Destin, Florida, before rampant development hit in the 1990s. He recalls clusters of beach cottages at the edge of 1 million acres of pristine wilderness on the Florida Panhandle, where his great-grandfather had bought a shack in 1926, which stayed in the family. A generation of Floribama natives grew up listening to Jimmy Buffett, who was one of their own. Will writes, his lyrics rang true to us. You could park on the side of the road and trek through the scrub, find your own private beach, and spend the day. Today, the forest is being felled, the beaches are being staked off as private property, and Will and his folks and old friends watch as wealthy outsiders arrive in search of the joy the locals once took for granted. The outsiders are unaware that they diminish the possibility of such unfettered joy with every new construction site and fence they put up. The outsiders are unaware that their upscale homes overlook what once was the nude beach or the gay beach. Now, Will says, in place of the genuinely funky and eclectic, Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville brand is building a retirement community up the road. There's lyricism in Will's work and in the way he approaches the world, in which he finds meaning in what once was, in what has been lost, and what has been preserved, while pondering what's left to save and what is worth fighting for. What is a Starbuck? Will's bewildered grandmother once asked him. These are decisions that face all of us every day in different ways as we navigate a rapidly changing world, cherishing, protecting, and preserving what we can along the way. Congratulations.
If I am ever in a car crash on Atlanta's infamous connector, this is the first responder that I want to come get me out of that. Henri Holmes and I sat near each other on the opening day of the residency 2 years ago. He introduced me, he had this great smile, stare under the mask. I know it is. Let's see it. There we go. But then he had a very sad experience that week when his father had a terrible stroke and we lost him. Now Valerie said, Henri, you can sit out, you can take some time out, but he didn't want to do that and he stuck with this. Sometimes work, you know, it's a comfort. I didn't get to work with him right away, which I wanted to do, but when I finally did this year, it had been worth the wait. He had made good steps toward a substantial book of essays with other mentors. They draw on the horrific and sometimes comic situations that he encounters as an Atlanta fireman, firefighter, and EMT. He writes about his family history being born into civil rights activism. He works about writing for gay newspapers and ethnic newspapers, the very kinds of journalism that has suffered, well, many of which went out of business during the 2008 crash. He talked about how that fall in the economy left him literally penniless and homeless. And then how he made the pivot into the high testosterone, Fox News loving world of the firehouse. He writes about how his encounters with street people and his macho co-workers helped him find his identity as a man and become a high-profile advocate for other people. His stories chill us with stories of decapitated corpses in Piedmont Park and dead men in a pancaked Audi, but he warms our hearts too with stories of his father who gave him good advice, with the women who raised him, including the grandmother, who tried to pray away the gay, but left him her Bible, which has duct tape reinforcing the spine, and is in his home now. Congratulations.
First time I got an email from Parrish Linton Howard, I was intimidated just by his name alone. Worthy, perhaps, I thought, of a character from Bridgerton. Yet Parrish was decidedly not that. Humble to the core. He worked for a small newspaper in Georgia and came to this program intent on exploring his community, the skeletons that lay in his own backyard. They were ugly and raw, born from the brutal history of this soil that is home to so many of us. While here in this MFA program at UGA, Parrish sharpened his shovel to dig deeper, to excavate the stories that were buried all around him. This program, he told me, gave him the permission and guidance he sought to do so. I worked with Parrish as he sought to tell intimate tales of those who bore the brunt of school desegregation. I was amazed at the depth of his reporting. Tons and tons of documents and newspaper archives. He interviewed more than 25 people. And how he chose to give voice to those people who had not been heard before. Among Parrish's successes was a piece he wrote for a special issue of Bravey magazine that documented a Georgia man's new start in a prison transition program. The work in the chicken factory was grueling, but Parrish explored why these men were willing to endure such brutal conditions for a small taste of freedom. Parrish's stories examined the idea of claiming a place, who it belongs to, and how we value it. Congratulations, Parrish, on a terrific biography.
I knew Diana Keough when she joined this program. I knew that she was a former newspaper and magazine writer who had won national awards for her work. I knew she had a whopping good story to tell about a father who had led a secret life for almost 4 decades, contracting AIDS when the virus was still new, and then unknowingly infecting his wife, Diana's mother. I knew that Diana had incredible documentary evidence that as a spanking new journalist, then at the age of 25, she'd had the foresight and the courage to tape interviews with her parents about the revelations that were blowing her family apart. But here's what I didn't know about Diana. She possessed the mental and emotional strength to wade into this material, to embrace the thorny issues of writing about family, and meet the challenge of not just telling a dramatic and compelling story, but one that brims with meaning. What I didn't know is that Diana Keough had come here in search of a safe place to begin to tell this story. And I didn't know that she would give to this writing community the very thing she was in search of, an open heart and an empathetic ear. Congratulations.
Come on up here, Kim. Kim Lut was an Atlanta-based freelance journalist when she came to the program. She had a journalism degree, she had experience with CNN, with print, digital news organizations, but she wanted to write a memoir. And she's been struggling, like a lot of people, with a lot of material and trying to find the right form for it. And she's determined to turn that around. She was my student during her very first semester in the MFA program, and one of the first things we do is we decide about what books we're going to read as a group and talk about and try to learn from. And the first thing I learned was really hard to find something that Kim Lut hadn't already read. She was probably the best read student I have ever had. But when she started filing stories, her writing was really vivid and sensual, and it just took me places that I hadn't been. It took me to an Indiana steel town, which she described as redolent with the smell of old pennies. I love that phrase. It took me into a family that was very divided and troubled, and where she was really the only ally that her father had. She took me into an ICU where, despite the beeping and the smells, which she really described well, her always very proper mother brought flowers from well-wishers and a box of thank you notes that Kim was expected to write before the petals began to wilt. She wrote about sexual violence, alcohol and drug addiction, itches that can't be scratched, and what it's like to teeter on the edge of death. And she wrote about the magic of being the sexy girl in the red Labutin stilettos. In her final semester, mentored by Valerie Boyd, Kim has written what Valerie tells me is an excellent book proposal, complete with a blurb from author Keough. Agents will be reading it soon if they aren't already, and Kim is in the moment of a pivot and exciting time, the next chapter. Congratulations, Kim.
I think they're cheering for you, not me. Allison Lynn Miller is a champion of immersive reporting and writing. She leveraged her curiosity to explore her Georgia backyard. On the way to her degree, Allison asked big questions like, why do men hunt animals? What do they gain in the woods on a fall morning? What do they bring home from the woods on a fall afternoon? How can time in a wrestling ring offer us a path to grapple good versus evil? And how did a wrestling show on the outskirts of a Georgia city that twice voted for Donald Trump come to be a model of inclusivity? In the process, Allison Lynn Miller mapped worlds that were new to her, and she introduced us to worlds unsuspected. Let us celebrate Allison Lynn Miller.
Jasmine Pittman Murdoch. Last year, on my birthday in October, the Bitter Southerner published an essay titled, "Is That Your Mother?" I had wanted to disengage from the world on that day, but I knew the writer of this piece, and I knew I had to read it right away. In it, Jasmine conveys her experience of being the black mother of a child who appears to be white, and challenges many white assumptions about beauty and belonging. I wish I had read her essay when I was in college. It would have changed my world back then. Through the pain of ugly encounters, she celebrates the fullness of her identity and family. And she does this beautifully by connecting her own motherhood to her ancestral mothers in North Carolina of enslaved women who had their children snatched from them. In this piece and in her other work, Jasmine explores how blackness is a burden only under the white gaze, and much of her writing holds that gaze accountable. Jasmine's writing journey was one of exhaustive research and readings which informed not just the terrific Bitter Southerner piece, but much of her writing in this program. Her prose serves as proof of her hunger to be able to share stories that otherwise might never be heard. This morning, my colleague Pat reminded me that this is an Olympic year, so I would be remiss in not mentioning that Jasmine is the daughter of 2 Olympic athletes. Her father competed in Greco-Roman wrestling and later wrestled professionally as Pit Dog Pittman. Her mother was a hurdler who later modeled fur coats for a department store. Jasmine lost both her mother and her mother-in-law recently, and faith has played an important role in her life, glimpses of which she posts on Instagram under the handle Jasmine is Creating. And Jasmine, for sure, is creating some very, very fine stuff. She has been for many years, and I have no doubt that she will be for many years to come. Congratulations, Jasmine.
This is James Murdoch. I had to wrestle 2 other admirers of James Murdoch to do this introduction. They were Walt Whitman and Henry David Thoreau. You know, they quote James all the time. You see, James himself is a poet and a lover of wild spaces. We learn this through his indelible mark on this program. It is quite obvious that, like Thoreau, he came here to live deliberately. That intention could be seen in the first residency. James stepped boldly into our little community. He asked hard questions and exposed both his passion and his vulnerability. By his example, and sometimes in tears, like almost all the time in tears, he rendered us vulnerable too. He tenderized us, minds and hearts opened. And so it was ordained that James would keep things woo-woo. We felt proud of the leaps he made in his writing, all of it on display in a deeply reported and beautifully written Bitter Southerner piece on Georgia-grown oranges. But most of all, we felt moved by James's frequent soliloquies, in which he declared his awe for this writing tribe and his genuine love for each one of us. We found ourselves grateful for a man who leads with his heart in his writing and in person. He was so much sunlight to the square inch, as Whitman would say. We are still bathing in the cheer he radiated. Congratulations, James.
Presenting Dr. Hoyland Hicks, otherwise known as Hoy. He had worked as a physician for more than 30 years and retired in 2015 with dreams of finishing a book about Gus Johnson, who'd played with the Baltimore Bullets in the 70s and was one of Hoy's favorite basketball players. Hoy had spent years interviewing former NBA players, coaches, and Johnson's family. He had boxes of research and tapes of personal interviews. But on his final day at work, Hoy's mother was hospitalized, and instead of beginning his book, he found himself caring for his mom until her death at the age of 93. Hoy's wife, Davida, told me Hoy had a hard time getting back on track. He often accompanied Davida on her trips to Athens when she joined this MFA program in 2017. Shout out to the Magnificent Seven. I often saw them eating breakfast or dinner in the restaurant at the Indigo Hotel. On one of those trips, Hoy met Valerie. You guys can guess what happened next. So this wasn't quite a lunch with Valerie, but what happened was, when Val learned of Hoy's abandoned dreams, she immediately started working her magic. Well, she said, like you need to come to the program to finish that book." He told her he would consider it. And like that, Val reached across the table and gave him a fist bump. "Let's do it," she said. How can you say no to a Valerie fist bump? And so he enrolled in the same writing program as his wife. He was quiet and reserved for most of his time here at UGA. Then last year, Hoy, the man who never bragged about his work, blew everyone away when he read out loud what he had written about Gus Johnson. If you missed Hoy Reid, you missed a lot. I never had an opportunity to work with Hoy directly, but I understood then the depth of what a quiet observer had learned and applied to his work. Now we gather to revel in that. Congratulations, Hoy.
I kept thinking it was you instead of me, and it wasn't you. In 1977, a call went out to musicians in the Wyoming High School band near Cincinnati for a young pianist who could play the Star-Spangled Banner during the town's 4th of July celebration. Jennifer Sowers, age 16, volunteered and found herself accompanying a real-life diva, a globe-trotting opera singer named Nadine Waters, born in 1891, is that right? Although she would later lie about her age extensively, who'd been the toast of New York and Paris in the 1930s and 40s, performing on stages where black women had never before been welcomed and who had been barred from other venues and denied prize money because of her race, despite the brilliance of her talent. Among the many things about Ms. Waters that dazzled teenage Jennifer was the fact that at 85, she still believed in her voice and still pursued her ambition to become a star whose fame could rival that of the slightly younger but far better known Marian Anderson. Jennifer and Nadine Waters grew close. When the opera singer died in 1985, Jennifer felt a fidelity to her, almost a desire to carry on her quest for fame and recognition posthumously. Jennifer came to hugely respect the courage and pioneering spirit that had carried Nadine Waters across state lines and across oceans and onto stages where she was not often the person opera audiences expected to see. And Jennifer also honored the spark of dazzling hope and high self-esteem that told Nadine Waters that she was good enough, even if the music world showed her a cold shoulder, even after the world in general moved on without her. She knew she was more than good enough. She felt she was great. I was touched in Jennifer's writing by the way she treasured that undiminished spark of hope. She believed in Nadine Waters as much as Nadine Waters believed in herself, which is a rare sort of friend to find. At some point, even at many points, the world moves on without our proffered contributions. Maybe we don't win the prize or the acclaim we anticipated. The headlines name other people instead of us. To me, Jennifer's work on Nadine Waters not only resurrected an unsung civil rights hero, it offered a meditation on the nature of ambition and the nature of success. Why not remain as ambitious at 85 as you were at 25? I hope that will be true for me. And maybe if I'm very lucky, a young person like Jennifer will come visit me then. Jennifer completed many projects in pursuit of this MFA, including genealogical research, which she shared with the class. In one of her biographical sketches of Nadine Waters, Jennifer wrote, "It's time for the spotlight to shine on her accomplishments. It's time to honor Nadine Waters with an encore. Today it's time for the spotlight to shine on Jennifer Sowers, whom it's been my great privilege to work with and get to know." Congratulations.
If you can't tell, we're playing kind of a game of peekaboo backstage because we don't know who's going to surprise us by stepping around the curtain. I'm so pleased to find my colleague, my friend, my former student, Camille Danielle Whitaker, around the curtain. Get some energy in the room. I wish y'all could have been in the room with us yesterday. To hear this woman read, to hear this woman teach, to offer us new ideas in which we all reveled. I wish you could have heard her read her valedictory piece, Hello, Good Night, about the possibilities of jazz. I wish you could have been in the room to hear Camille Danielle Whitaker as she shared the parts of her story that her father composed. Full of joy, buoyant with talent, emboldened by narrative knowledge and experience, meet a writer who chronicles the Caribbean diaspora and brings her reporting insights to the page. Meet a writer who maps the trains of her heart and shares with us, her readers, a path through the trains of our hearts, and soon a path through the rain that's falling like crazy out here. That was a joke. You can't hear the rain? Good people meet a great writer, Camille Danielle Whitaker.
You know, there's a lot of kinship between music and writing. I used to always tell my students that if you couldn't dance to it, I didn't want to read it. And Rochelle Williams is another person who has a strong connection, like Camille, between music and writing. She came into the program, Rochelle Williams did, with an idea that seemed clear enough. She was going to write a book about the great jazz singer Diane Reeves, and she was going to focus on an album, Art and Survival, that the singer and songwriter composed, recorded during a really, really difficult period in her life, personally and professionally. And the album was her attempt to grapple with and exorcise depression and demons and to love herself again. Years earlier, Rochelle, before she came to us, Rochelle had interviewed Diane Reeves several times, met with the singer, learned quite a lot about her life, but she knew that in the MFA program she would have the chance to dig deeper, to freshen her material. But there was a problem. Diane Reeves kind of went silent on her, even though what Rochelle was interested in was an album that she herself called her most important work. Now, the timing didn't work in Rochelle's favor. Unlike most of us, she lives in our nation's capital, in Washington, D.C., near the Capitol. Her work was complicated by the COVID pandemic, by literal barricades of wire and concrete. She was kind of trapped in her apartment by pandemic rules. There were demonstrations all the time from Make America Great Again to Black Lives Matter. There was the brutal 2016 presidential contest, and going to the grocery store was an ordeal. And Rochelle was, as she said to me during that time, on the struggle bus for the whole year that we worked together, and yet she dug into her own archives, her earlier research, did some additional reporting, and she wrote some artful and moving scenes which she read to us in her final, her thesis presentation yesterday. She went as far as she could go using what she had, but still there was something missing. And finally, this summer, as she worked with mentor Lolis Eric Eli, who was not able to be with us on the stage today, he helped her track down some musicians from Diane Reeves' orbit. And lo and behold, she reestablished contact. And now she and Diane Reeves talk on the phone every week. And as she told us yesterday in her final presentation, like the singer that she's writing about, she's fought her own battle. She's using art not only to survive, but to finally do the book she's been wanting to do. And I think it will be wonderful, and I can hardly wait to read it. Congratulations.
We have a few graduating students who are on Zoom today, so we want to introduce them. We think they're out there. So people come to this program with varying ambitions. Some want to move from short-form journalism to more expansive storytelling, and some want to write books. Will Martin's ambition was both lofty and simple. He wanted to become a better writer. He arrived at this program with pages and pages squirreled away in a drawer. He had never shown his writing to anyone. Will was focused. He got busy crafting new stories about important things, about fatherhood, about a skeet shooter who practices his hobby despite his blindness. He wrote about a man's belated discovery of his own mother's inner life, and about our vanishing wilderness, its fauna and flora, and the potential to teach us about our own humanity. Will writes with power and simplicity. He possesses a sixth sense for details that will touch us. He has more than fulfilled his ambition to become a better writer. He's moved his words, his storytelling, from the darkness of a drawer into the light of the world, and we are richer for it. Will Martin. Sierra Williams is a deep thinker who came to this program with huge desire. She longed to learn how to spin stories. But over the course of these 2 years, Sierra's passion developed muscles she might not have known she had. She became an investigative reporter. Sierra drove to the middle of nowhere in Texas on her own dime in the midst of a pandemic, because that's where the story was. She tracked down the unnamed victims of a grave injustice, gained their trust in hour-long phone calls, then showed up on their doorsteps to learn more. She badgered a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and a judge. She filed her first ever Freedom of Information request and landed hundreds of pages of documents, transcripts, photos, and videotape that included body camera footage of a police officer's first interview with the perpetrator of 2 rapes. Then she knocked on the rapist's door and gave him a chance to speak for himself. She sewed all this together into a narrative that sizzles with scenes, characters, action, dialogue, and meaning. Sierra took to heart the maxim that great writing is built on great reporting. She reported and reported and reported, then she wrote. Congratulations, Sierra.
Brandon Pierre Fleming. Brandon and I met 2 years ago at the residency. We were sitting on opposite sides of the room. He was wearing Harvard logo gear every day and a terrible scowl, which I've since learned is just kind of the male version of resting bitch face, and I really didn't say anything about what he was thinking. The buzz about his application package was that his writing was academic and stilted, pretty much what you would expect from a Harvard debate coach. But I had worked at Harvard, and I had rewritten plenty of windy prose written by Harvard professors and the like, and so I was not afraid of the challenge. What I did not expect was that the first book that we read as a group, Keough Lehman's masterful memoir, Heavy, would light a fire in Brandon's brain. If Keough could write authentically about the worst times of his life and the best, then Brandon thought he would give it a try. His first reading response, a short piece he gave to me after reading that book, was packed with real children, himself and his siblings, enduring terrible things, and the lasting damage that can inflict. Some of it was overwrought, but none of it was stilted. I knew right then that Brandon had a book in it. And then after that, everything happened so fast. By the end of Brandon's first year, he had an agent, and Valerie helped him hammer out a book proposal. It sold fast, and the publisher wanted a complete manuscript in 6 months, which seemed nearly impossible. but we were in the pandemic lockdown. And Brandon wrote, and I revised and fact-checked as fast as we could all summer. We weren't done, and Valerie let me mentor Brandon again. Miseducated, a memoir with an introduction by Dr. Cornell West, was released by Hachette, one of the top 5 publishers, on June 15th, just 6 weeks ago or so. And so right now, today, instead of being here to hug us on stage, Brandon is doing what authors do. He is on the road giving motivational talks and encouraging people to pick up a copy while they're there. The book makes you feel pain. It makes you taste blood, sweat on the basketball court, feel a lover's touch, know the agony of academic defeat, and ultimately, to borrow a phrase from Faulkner, not only endure but prevail. It is, in the end, a hopeful and inspiring story. Being able to work with Brandon to help this happen has been a great gift to me, and I am so proud of him. Brandon, be our funny.
Tom Cullen is an affable man. Tom Cullen is a gentle man. That phrase is oft overused but appropriate here. Tom Cullen is a grading man who teaches in this fine school and found within himself to return to school to get better at what he does. When he wrote for me, he took me to a gym. He offered me a front row seat in that gym. He showed me hopeful pugilists on a path to learn, to grow, to heal. Reporting and writing about those boxers fighting their way back to health, he showed great empathy and keen interpretive powers. Concurrent with that reporting, Tom joined his own fight for health. That fight was emotional and physical, and he reported and wrote the heck out of that story too. In the process, he inspired us all. Let us celebrate Tom Cullen.
Thank you to the narrative nonfiction faculty, and congratulations to our narrative nonfiction graduates and our screenwriting graduates. Congratulations, class of 2021. It's now my pleasure to welcome back up our supportive and thoughtful dean, whose default answer is always yes. And that's how this kind of program has been able to thrive in an academic environment like UGA that's not always as open to innovative ideas. But this dean, Dr. Charles Davis, his default is yes. And that has been so valuable to making this program happen. Please welcome back Charles Davis.
My default answer to Valerie is yes. I should underscore that. I'm a journalist by trade, turned academic, so I hate a fact error, and I made one when I was up here earlier, which I wish to correct. Dr. Jeff Springston is no longer the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies. He holds a new position as of, August 1st? I don't want to screw that up. August 1st, he is now Director of MFA Programs at Grady College. Join me. That is significant on multiple fronts. First of all, it means that our MFA program has grown large enough and powerful enough to need its own full-time director. And that's a significant milestone. Between this program, the low residency MFA program, and our newest addition, our MFA in Film and Television Production, which welcomed its first cohort this year. Next year, we're going to have north of 80 MFA students bopping around this place. which is truly remarkable given that 5 years ago we had none. All of that is a credit to the individuals you see on the stage and before you. Valerie and Nate, Jeff, it's really easy to say we wouldn't be here without you because we wouldn't be here without you. I remember starting in 2013 and finding a manila folder on the desk that my predecessor had left. And I was like, why not this? And I opened it up and it was a document about an MFA program. I thought, that's interesting. And I went in and talked to Jeff. I said, what is this thing? And we got to work. And it's been quite a journey to watch. But I'm just so thankful for all of you. And so proud of this new class of graduates. Our MFA graduates have proven themselves worthy of the achievement that we're celebrating. They've laughed, they've cried, they've stretched. I'm sure a few of them have screamed primarily during this process, but now they are ready. Graduates, today you join more than 26,000 Grady alumni out there. Please understand that your Grady college ties last the rest of your lives. And the first step starts today. We need you as active alums. When this program calls, we need you to answer the phone, and they will call. They will want you to come speak. They will want you to hang out at residency. They might even want you to come to a graduation. Remember and say yes, please, because we need you as active, involved alums. Best wishes from all of us at Grady. Congratulations, and welcome to our alumni ranks. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, the MFA class, congratulations to each and every one. To close us out, please welcome screenwriting graduate Denise Wallingford.
University of Georgia, Grady School of Journalism, Master, Fine Arts and Narrative Media Writing and Screenwriting, Class of 2021, this is your blessing. May we be blessed. Who are we? We are those in need of blessing. So may we on this planet, in this nation, this state, this city, this campus, this room, yes, may we be blessed because in these last 18 months, we have been hit with a freight train. We have been swirled up in a hurricane. And now we find ourselves here. May we be blessed because when we began this journey 2 years ago, dare I say, we were naive. We thought we were safe from worldwide, and I'll use the word, sorry, Kendra, pandemics, which decimate millions upon millions of people, just like that. Sickness, death, vaccines, masks. Who are we? We are those in need of blessing. So may we be blessed because some of us naively thought perhaps we had weathered the hurricanes which have churned up, hurricanes created by our nation's own very successful, very bloody, very brutal beginnings. We have witnessed our own systemic, horrifying truths about race laid bare before our very own eyes and the eyes of the world. Bodies, black, brown, tan, white. Who are we? We are those in need of blessing. So may we be blessed, we graduates to speak, to write, to create with such vigor and such force that honor is our motivator, truth is our megaphone, justice is our mission, unity our mantle, and love our message. Who are we? We are those who have survived, and we are those who thrive. We are those who have been mentored so well that we have grown and we have blossomed. We are those who bring blessings. So may we all be blessed by that which is divine as we shower our rich blessings on our traumatized world. Amen.